All right, let's take a look at some of the one of the parts of this section of the textbook that goes along with our move towards secession and the Civil War, and that's the move westward. You'll talk more about this in the second part of this class too, so this gets a sort of another round of discussion later on. But it's important to kind of look at this and talk about how the America is moving west as we add this land after the Mexican War, and as we add this land after the settling of the Oregon dispute. Then you start to see, more and more Americans moving west, and these trails kind of tell you the story. You have some people moving west coming out of St. Louis that are going to move towards Santa Fe and towards some of the new territory in New Mexico, then follow the Spanish Trail out to California. There are some that are going to move a little bit further northward and take the Oregon Trail out to where it is today, Portland, Fort Vancouver, and those areas out there. Or you can hop off the Oregon Trail and move towards Northern California and towards San Francisco. Later, we'll talk about the Mormon Trail as they push out this way in towards the Salt Lake. And then you have others that stuck along in here, like the Pony Express mail route. So this is a very complicated move westward. By 1860, more than 4 million people have crossed the Mississippi River heading westward. It's part of Manifest Destiny. It is part of what John L. O'Sullivan had said, that it's our desire to and our right to control this continent, our manifest destiny, overspreading the continent. So part of that is the move towards the west, and these trails are what gets people out here. Wagon trains bearing settlers, trade goods, people, items, households, everything would move westward, and that is it's a very difficult trek. Some of these overland, like for example, going to Oregon, that's about a 2,000-mile trek, and it's probably going to take you 6 months if the weather's good. Okay. So that is, if you go through some of these other trails, it's pretty much the same story. It's a very difficult journey to get out here and get to the west. You have possible conflicts along the way. This whole area out here along the plains is inhabited by the Plains Indians. So everything from the Sioux to the Cheyenne, and they could be hostile if you were in their territory. If you move south, you go through Old Spanish territory, and that is also a very difficult sort of thing to do. By the 1840s or so, the first sizable wagon trains were moving out the Oregon Trail. It was, it's a day in, day out work to move these families and these settlers out west. So wagon trains like this were organized, pushed west. They could help you protect yourselves. There's more guns and more men to protect the wagon trains than if you were just trying to do it by yourself. Now, of course, in the beginning, a lot of this where people are moving out here to Oregon to get new lands and whatever. And then by the late 1840s, you know what happens. We talked about this a little bit in the other lecture. By 1849, gold is discovered here in California. And so some people are going to hop these trails to go to California and to try to make their fortune in California. So that's going to pull miners, that's going to pull all sorts of people in, but eventually it's going to pull in other groups as well to inhabit California as well. Some will be ranchers, some will be, farmers, but you're going to have miners as well. Don't forget that here in Texas, there were people that had moved down into Texas. Texas had become part of America, and as a result of John Tyler annexing and the United States annexing Texas. And so by the late 1840s, you have people moving in and inhabiting this area and then pushing out into the New Mexico area. A lot of this area, parts of New Mexico here in Texas, are going to become rancher areas. And you'll talk about that, especially in the second part of this class, about how, especially as the railroads make their way out here, that ranchers would push their herds up north through Santa Fe to catch the railroads and to carry that meat back to the big cities in the east. So that is part of it as well. So after Texas annexation, you're going to have people moving into this area. The other big thing is, of course, after 1849, you're going to see the annex, well, the attempt to pull California into the Union. And of course, that's going to encourage even more people to move out here as a part of the gold rush. The California gold rush, I mean, it will pull people by, it's estimated that as many as 300,000 people had moved down into California by 1850 or so, trying to find their riches. So the gold rush produces tons of momentum out here. But of course, remember, also is what's going to pull California into the Union. Mining life is brutal. Many of these areas grow up overnight. They're very violent places. That people could be murdered over claims. People can be murdered in towns. A lot of these areas grew up faster than law and order could catch up to them. So there were people there from every social class. Okay, people came to California from the very poor to the very wealthy, seeking even more wealth or seeking new wealth. And so violence oftentimes begat violence. And many of these mining areas could be extremely violent. The the move to California, though, was just as dangerous as any other area. Even though you could see it romanticized like this, okay, the Oregon Trail, how romantic and how beautiful it looks, right? But it's extremely dangerous. A lot of you kind of latched on to the thing I showed in class about the doomed Donner Party. The Donner Party left Missouri, headed towards California, headed towards the uh, the the mining camps and the riches. Okay, the Donner Party, sometimes called the Donner Reed Party. Anyway, they will make their way out here, but they get out here to California, and in the winter they get stranded in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and unfortunately, as they get stranded in this area, they are all pretty much going to succumb to a very brutal winter. Only 45 are going to survive, so they lose about half of the party. Only about half of them will make it to California, but unfortunately, to survive, some of them had to resort to cannibalism. They had to eat one another in order to survive, and that is they ate some of the bodies that had succumbed to sickness and to starvation. So the Donner Party is a, a great example of just how difficult this journey could be. Okay. Um, uh, Really one of the next things besides this move west I want to talk about is I want to go back to the trails here, and I want to point out one group in particular, and that's the Mormon Trail. And you can see this from right here. Okay, the Mormons are a new religious group that comes out of the Second Great Awakening. Now, I'm going to do a separate lecture here in a few minutes that'll come up. That'll be about the religious movements and some of the abolitionist movements as well, which will be important for your paper that you're going to be writing while we're out. But the Second Great Awakening produced some major new religions, including the Mormons. Okay, Mormonism was a religion or religious group founded by Joseph Smith Jr. The child of, or his family was from Vermont. They were intensely religious. Okay, and in 1823, he reported that he had been visited by an angel named Moroni, and had given him or had shown him where these golden tablets were that were a lost gospel of the Bible. And he then began to attract a group of people that would, Joseph Smith began to tell this story and began to gather converts that would eventually become the Mormons. They were discriminated against, as many new religions were. They would then decide to move west to escape the really some of the hostilities. Okay, so they would leave Nauvoo, which is this area that they sort of set up a commune in. But once they really kind of came under attack, especially for plural marriage, they having more than one wife, they would eventually begin to pull up here and move west, and then inhabit the area around the Great Salt Lake and around Utah. Brigham Young, who is one of the leaders of the movements, will help them move west. And so Joseph Smith and then Brigham Young would complete that movement out west. So in wagons, about 12,000 or so moved across Nebraska, Wyoming, and then into Utah. By 1848 or so, they had established themselves there and done pretty well. So Mormonism is a good example of how the West can provide an area for people to move to get a new start. And of course, some people did that. Some people left, maybe even violence or bad debts or whatever, and moved westward and really tried to start over. And it's a very difficult thing to do. All right, we're going to stop here, okay, because that kind of gets us through some of the West, and this is a really short one. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a little bit about transcendentalism, about romanticism, and a little bit about some of the Second Great Awakening, and which again won't take very long either. And that way we'll be ready to kind of get back and talk about some of the politics of California coming into the Union by the next time.